that's my speech. But it's also a question, I'd like you, maybe Sandra, you can start your perspective on that development, on that process, and to the extent you think things could be done differently or could have been done differently, I'd like to hear it.
David, your takeaway on the process being broken was exactly kind of what I noticed after the meeting last week. I had asked a number of people going into that meeting what they thought. Was it going to be approved? And everybody had the understanding going into that meeting on February 26th that this building was finally going to be approved. There was so much hope in that room. We had all of our business owners who have been waiting for this building to be approved and to go in. The fact that the indication that the developer had received through the meetings that they had in staff meetings leading up led them to believe that they were going to be getting approval. And then in that meeting, everything seemed to fall off the rails. Means that there is some type of disconnect happening with this process, and we need to understand where it is. This is impacting and it's hurting our relationships within the city. I mean, we have to know as a community that we are very fortunate to have investors such as the Hendricks Group who want to invest in our community. There are so many small towns who don't have somebody like this. We have to think about our investors as donors because they share so much of the big coverage of our tax dollars. So we have to really work with them. I'm not saying that developers should come in and that they should be given carte blanche to be able to do whatever it is that they want. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we do have an obligation to respect that they want to be a part of our community and help them do that. So yes, the process is, there's something wrong in that process right now, and I don't know exactly what it is. I have been reaching out to some people in the Plan Commission to share my concerns regarding that. The other thing we have to look at is that the citizens, I mean, you talked about the citizens who have come out in favor of this, but there's also a tax implication. We are now, if this started in 2017, the fact that this is 2020 and we are still talking about this building and it has not gone in yet means that we are deferring these tax dollars that our city could be using. And we really, it's in our best interest to try to get this building approved as a city, and we need to be doing that.
Okay, lots of questions there. So you're correct on your timeline. This process first came before the Planning Commission before I was even elected mayor. And before I became mayor, the process was going through the Planning Commission, and feedback was given, and really not much changes, if any, were done to the drawings. So when I came in to be mayor, I said, look, we need to decide how we're going to move this process forward. And I was very clear with the applicant that there's been some clear direction given to talk about some of the subtler things, the architecture and so forth that you're going to need to address. So please come back after and make some alterations and get more in line with the feedback that you've heard from the Planning Commission. And so the applicant at that time, to the best of my recollection, that they've withdrawn their application twice. I believe that was one of the times that they withdrew their application. So they came back, and as we went to look at changing the code, which is a big deal, right? I mean, I talked about the importance of the downtown Delafield and the commercial area over on Highway 83. If you're talking about changing the code in historic downtown Delafield, this is something that requires community involvement, right? This is something that's going to take time. This is something where we're trying to understand what's reasonable for this change and what's not. And not necessarily just for the Hendricks building. We have to look at it for the entire zoning area, right? I can go into all kinds of details about spot zoning and things like this, but we needed to have a discussion about all of downtown Delafield, and that's what we did. And we changed the zoning within CBD1, and it took several months to do that. Difficult conversation. When we surveyed the city of Delafield citizens when I first came to mayor, within 3 months, to update the comprehensive plan, I wanted a survey done of everybody in the city of Delafield. And when you look at that survey, 90% of the people that responded to a statistically significant survey said they want to maintain the Williamsburg architecture and look of downtown Delafield. So these are the things we're trying to balance, right? So my growth plan and development plan has to be a balanced plan. We're balancing taxes, we're balancing following, state statute and the codes, and working with the developers to move their projects forward. This one is a tough one. This is probably one of the most difficult ones that we could have in the city when you're talking about the downtown historic district. So we have the light at the end of the tunnel. We are very close to being able to get approval for that. But at the last Planning Commission meeting, while many things appeared to be changed and fully compliant with the code, there were 63 engineering items that had been left unresolved based on the letter from the city engineer. The planner had, a half dozen or more questions about the most recent information that we had been provided. And then there were a few new questions that came up at the Planning Commission. The Public Works Committee had some specific issues that they felt uncomfortable being able to approve. It was basically around the lack of documentation and the clarity, which we need to have final designs to get final approval. So I know we've been in close discussions with the applicant, and they are working diligently to wrap up some of those items, and we're looking forward to seeing them on the Planning Commission at the end of March, hopefully to get the approval that we've all been looking for. The changes they've made, I support. It's not Williamsburg architecture, but it's architecture that's complementary, which I don't believe is where it was when we started. And just two other things, conditional use, right? There's a lot of people in this community that have different understandings of conditional use, and a lot of that is based off history. Well, when Act 67 came in, the law changed, and the applicants needed to change with that. We can't approve exceptions as maybe we did in the past, and did do in the past. In fact, I have voted for ones in the past. But under the new state statutes, that's not allowed. You have to comply with the code, and we had to educate the public on that, and that takes time as well. And lastly, I laugh, jest when I hear different numbers about the tax benefits of this particular parcel. Numbers get thrown out all over the place, from $800,000 to $350,000. But let me tell you what the fact is. The fact is, if it builds out to be a $25 million building, which is what we're estimating, then the actual tax benefits will be $429,000. So that's the bottom line tax that they will pay. When fully completed, the city of Delafield will get $110,000 in taxes from that development. And that's not until a year, at least, sometimes two, until after they take occupancy, by the time the tax rolls take advantage of that. So we have a structural deficit problem that we're facing, that we run out of our fund balance in 2023. So while this is a great thing, and it definitely is going to help as one of